There are 4 words that every citizen in Zimbabwe knows: man, woman, or child, and these are the parallel market rate. It has taken over citizens' lives to such an extent that discussing the rate, as it is called, has become a normal topic of conversation. The question is why? Why should a vibrant performing economy, or so the Zimbabwean government says, be held hostage to a parallel exchange rate that is set on the streets of the country by faceless, nameless people, a rate which citizens and it seems the government has no control over, but has such an impact on everyone's daily lives? Diplomatic Passport had to investigate. Why are people suffering because of such a thing as a parallel market exchange rate? Prices and parallel exchange rate madness. I'm standing in the middle of the central business district in Zimbabwe's capital city, Harare. Just a stone's throw away from me is Zimbabwe's Parliament building. Now, this may be the only place in the capital whereby you can walk into a shop and be able to transact in both Zimbabwe dollars, whether it be swipe, or whether it be through mobile money platforms, and be able to buy goods and services in the shops. As I said, this could be the only place in the capital. Go downtown, everything is United States dollars. The question is Zimbabwe already dollarized? And if not, what can the authorities do to bring a halt to what I said was the pricing and parallel exchange rate madness? Let's talk numbers. The current Zimbabwean auction rate as set by the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe sits at just over 1,200 Zimbabwe dollars to one United States dollar. But on the streets, it trades at anywhere between 2,400 to 2,700 Zimbabwe dollars to one United States dollar. That's an almost 100% premium. Ordinarily, to most countries, this should not be a problem. Who cares where the parallel market rate is anyway? But in an environment like Zimbabwe's, the parallel market exchange rate has a direct impact on the prices of goods and services. It has had such an impact that basic commodities such as bread, flour, cooking oil, and mealie meal are becoming out of the reach of most citizens. They just cannot afford them. Why?
So it's manifesting through a number of channels. The first one is through erosion of salaries on our citizens. What workers are getting or earning at work is now meaningless, because obviously if you are talking of a rate of 2.5, there's no employer who can match any salary right now. That's one side of it. Then the second side is through inflation. You have seen how the prices are running away in the shops, particularly the Zim dollar prices. And again, it's the background that the salary again is not increasing. The last point on the citizens is that because of the runaway inflation, remember I'm talking about Zim dollar inflation, not blended, which is of course not now estimated. The market is disbanded the Zim dollar. So our civil servants in particular, who are earning significant amount of salary in Zim dollar, are facing a market which is now demanding US dollar.
So simply, because many Zimbabweans still receive their salaries and wages in Zimbabwe dollars, but most retail outlets and stores are insisting on payment in United States dollars, and if payment is accepted in Zimbabwe dollars, then what rate are they pricing at? Normally it's the parallel market exchange rate, or worse, a forward anticipated exchange rate.
Kubasa kwangu ndinotambira US ni RTG zvese handiti, but RTG haisi kushanda handiti. Taikumbira hurumende dai yangokwanisa kudolarize handiti, ikadolarize at the same time tokwanisa kungoshandisa US, tongoita zve-US. Kana zvaramba toita zve-RTGs but ine value, because at the same time US racho rikunetsa kuti isusu tikati tine US tapiwa US handiti, ukasvika mushopu maprice e-US even though atokwira as compared to yesterday handiti. Jarize kuti isusu kana une $100 you could buy something more zvinobatika handiti, but these days haichashanda handiti. You need more like 300 US kuti ukave marent house izvo zvichine chida about 150 US, 200 US apa hora 300 US handiti. Uchada mafees, uchada chikafu handiti. RTGS yacho uchasvika black market okunzi 2.2 rate, saka zitomboshanda kana ka1. Mashops vari kuaccepta US, like kubasa kwangu ini ndinopiwa RTG ne-US, but iwo kauya uchitotenga ne-RTG ndokupa imwe rate yekupenga yekuti unoona wega kuti reka ndibudise US randakasungira nditenge ne-US.
Chinondirwadza ka ndechekuti kubasa kwangu inini ka ndikutambira RTGS. Ndatambira RTGS. Ndoenda pa break market apo. Rendo ndakudachi US. Ndakumba US. Handika. Asi ndikutambira chi RTGS. Animuzoona manje ka. Saka zvinhu zvinezvi ndibata kuti kukambana wasikundiwedzera. Nechipiwa kamari kashoma ka RTGS. Kuti ndapiwa RTGS ndatambira 200,000. Inotenge rate kuti wewe uchitenga kuti watambira kuti uda kutenga tombo to uda kutambira kana kuti 150 years haikwani mazona. Saka zvinhu mukatona na kutengesa madodo masimba utasoka vautohasela kuti zvinhu zviite. Chinoitika manje ka ndechekuti ini mari yandakatambira last month neyandakazotambira apa mwedzi uno handirika time yamunongonzwanzi kana kuti mawedzerwa mari ka US kangowedzerwa ndi ka RTGS kaika rate robva rakwira kuti ndinotenga US yeka ni kamari kandapiwa ka inzungu.
People's earnings are being savaged, eroded on a daily, sometimes hourly basis, rendered useless before use. Citizens feel that they cannot make ends meet. They have no confidence in the Zimbabwe dollar as a store of value. As soon as they receive Zimbabwe dollars, they rush to buy US dollars on the parallel market. And so the cycle continues. Worse, those I spoke to feel that they have nowhere to turn and feel helpless about what to do.
Another thing, high prices in shop. If things are expensive, my big shops say, that's bound to cause like a high rise of things that are happening around black market and things like that.
Zvinhu zviri kukwira tototi zvoni masupermarket acho namahombe autokwidza ukaenda unotenga mari yawo bhondi rawo ritori pamusoro pedhola ukaenda wakutodawo madhora acho nekuti vanotokwidza mabhondi kuti tishandise maUS isu tei tisina maUS. Saka ipapo pari kuoma daily zvinhu zvikukwira ukangoita 2 days unoenda uchona chinhu chanzi chakwira iwo masupermarket acho atinoti mahombe acho ndo ari kutodhura.
Dambudziko hombe kana iri nyaya yerate aichatirwadza because tazvijaira, asi chiri kunyanya kurwadza parate ndepekuti inenge ichikwira dola US racho rinenge richikwira futi like izvozvi chingwa chakuita $50 maUS hasi mabondi. Saka izvozvo zvinotinetsa ndo zviri kunyanya kutivhiringidza panyaya dzekukwira kwezvinhu.
Before I spoke to retailers, business, the government and other stakeholders, I first wanted to understand if this feeling of helplessness described to me, that I may personally have also felt, have any serious psychological effects on individuals, and did it affect society or not?
When we talk about trauma, we're not talking just about someone being raped or someone seeing a dead body or being blown up. We're talking about something that disturbs the mind, something that makes you feel distressed, that you can't cope anymore. So things like what's going on here at the moment is, by the way, we are creatures of a habit, okay? We get used to things the way they're introduced to us. So these things that are happening now, they affect us, the older generation, more than they affect the younger generation. But what affects us is also what affects them, okay? We are not disconnected. If me as a father, and I'm struggling because I remember back in the day, $5 used to get me grocery for the week, okay? And nowadays, $5 doesn't even exist, okay? And we're having to talk about 500,000 to get groceries for the week. And our children seem to think that's okay, because in their mind, in their orientation, this is how things have been. So they've gotten used to the chaos. But in my mind, I'm used to, or I remember when things used to be stable, okay? What's happening at the moment is instability, all right? This is where we talk about instability, all right? Because things are not habitual as we used to see them be. So those things actually cause a lot of distress, especially on the breadwinner, because you go to work, the money that you've budgeted that, okay, this month I'm going to need $250,000 to get by. By the time you get to the end of the month, you probably need double that.
So economic stress can lead to psychological troubles. I can understand why, can't you?
Often when we talk about the concept of depression, okay, that's where I'm going to start. Actually, let me start a few steps back. The anxiety of, am I going to manage? Yeah, just the fear. What am I going to tell my son who's supposed to be going to school tomorrow and I can't afford the rent? What kind of a father am I? I start to see myself as a failure, okay? And the more of that happens, I start to get into that space where we call helpless and hopeless. And those two words are critically what defines depression. Okay? So when we talk about depression, essentially we are talking about someone losing hope and feeling helpless. And therefore, if you feel helpless, you start to feel yourself a burden to other people.
Okay, so now it was time to hit the streets. The first thing I noticed is that on the capital Harare street corners, vendors, licensed or unlicensed, those who sell sweets and crisps all over the city, they have also dollarized, and most are not accepting Zimbabwe dollars for their wares. If this so-called dollarization is on street corners, what must it be like in formal business? So my obvious next step was a well-known retail grocery store in the center of Harare's central business district, a stone's throw away from Parliament. No pretense was evident about the Zimbabwe dollar-US dollar exchange rate that they were pricing their goods at. All pretense that they were using the official exchange rate had disappeared. In fact, I noticed something odd. Certain products the store insisted that I could only pay for in United States dollars.
Most of the value chain players are exclusively charging in US dollars. And it's difficult for a retailer or a wholesaler to then charge goods that you procure exclusively in US dollars in the local currency. Because number one, you've got to also, you are mandated to apply the legislated exchange rate. And once you do that, it becomes very difficult for you to be able to cover for the cost of procuring the foreign currency. Remember, you cannot go to the auction to procure foreign currency for domestic payments. You can only do so if you are importing. So naturally it means that a retailer or a wholesaler has got to mobilize foreign currency from within through products for them to be able to pay for the goods and services to most of the suppliers and the manufacturers that are exclusively charging in US dollars. Where someone charges you in local currency, in this environment, certainly they will not actually sell that product to you at the ruling official exchange rate. They will apply a number of exchange rates. So sometimes a retailer is left with no option, but of course to procure the commodities and goods in US dollars.
Now this is the central business district of the capital, but Harare is actually split into two halves, a portion in which you can use Zimbabwe dollars to pay for goods, and downtown Harare in which everything is transacted in United States dollars, and Zimbabwe dollars, cash or mobile money are just not welcome or accepted at all. I spoke to the president of the Confederation of Zimbabwe Industries, Kurai Macheza, to hear what the largest body representing business in Zimbabwe had to say.
What is driving those price increases is obviously the exchange rate, and this is the exchange rate on the parallel market. If you look at what is happening on that parallel market, rates have been moving up for the past 2 weeks, and as of today, we've got a premium of over 100%, and that obviously filters into the economy by way of price movements as producers and even distributors factor in those exchange rate movements. We have had meetings with the Reserve Bank, with the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Industry, just to find out what could be the underlying causes of those runaway exchange rate movements. As of now, we haven't really identified, but we assist with the matter, we are debating, we are discussing, we are engaging each other. As you are aware, government did put up a task force to look at the same matter on Tuesday, and this comprises the Ministry of Industry, Ministry of Finance, and the Ministry of ICT. They are also engaging our members in terms of sector representative bodies, and us as the BUMO, just to find out what is behind all this instability in terms of exchange rate. And we are dialoguing as soon as we really are concluded or we have been able to identify what could be the possible causes of that exchange rate movement. And if we do, we'll then recommend the best course of action to stabilize our economy.
Okay, let's try to understand as simply as possible why exactly the parallel exchange rate exists and why is it, as critics contend, on a freefall. I spoke to some renowned Zimbabwean economic experts and commentators to hear their views.
Well, I think it's really the fact that we've seen an injection of liquidity into the economy. For example, the recent increase in civil servants' wages by 100%. Obviously, that results in an increase in liquidity, which then again puts pressure. Because remember, we are now predominantly a dollarized economy. So what we've seen is that there's still a mismatch between the demand for the US dollar and the supply. So for those individuals, for example, that are getting paid in Zim dollars, after getting paid, they then have to go to the market, the foreign exchange markets, to change their US dollar their Zim dollar salary into US dollar. So when there is an increase in salaries, for example, that also then puts a bit of pressure on the exchange rate, because it means the demand for the US dollar then increases, and that then results in a depreciation.
There's a unitary relationship between money supply and exchange rate. In actual sense, if money supply increases by 100%, you expect the exchange rate to go up by 100%. So I can take you back to mid-year 2022, when money supply was around $1 trillion. The rate was around 500 against $1 US. But by December 2022, money supply was around $2.3 trillion. And you can agree with me, the rate was above 1,000. So it also doubled. Right now, we are seeing figures of money supply encroaching almost $3 trillion. So again, the rate is also running away.
So too much money chasing too few goods. In this case, United States dollars is the goods, and all the money in the system apparently coming from the government, they contend? Is it that simple? If it's down to the government of Zimbabwe, then what exactly are they doing about it? Last year, the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe raised interest rates to 200% to stifle lending in the economy. That's since been reduced to 140%. They issued gold coins and in 2023, gold-backed digital tokens, all in an effort to tame money supply growth, fight inflation, and also try and stabilize the exchange rate. Treasury also blacklisted suppliers who it was discovered had taken their payments and immediately traded them on the parallel market, flouting exchange control regulations. Zimbabwe's Finance Minister, Professor Ntuli Ncube, had this to say.
We have responded to inflation domestically by raising interest rates. I've got two slides there, and the interest rates have been quite high, but of late we've started bringing down the interest rate. But I'm now wondering, with the recent hike in the exchange rate in other markets, should I increase interest rates? Please stop pushing up that parallel market. If you do, I will increase interest rate back to 200% and beyond.
The rapid price increases have seen a swift response from Zimbabwe's cabinet, who recently announced the setting up of an interministerial committee to investigate the causes of the price hikes. Minister of Information, Publicity and Broadcasting Services, Monica Mshwanga, told a post-cabinet briefing that the cabinet had discussed at length the price and basic food supply situation following a brief on the matter by the Minister of Industry and Commerce, Dr. Sekhaya Nzenza. And I quote, she said, "The nation is being informed that cabinet is concerned about the spiraling prices of the 14 basic goods, especially bread, flour, cooking oil and mealie meal. The Minister of Industry and Commerce is already engaging the concerned stakeholders, including manufacturers, wholesalers, retailers and other associations on the matter. Given the urgency of the matter, Cabinet has set up a committee to quickly investigate, monitor and make appropriate recommendations to Cabinet with a view to bringing sanity to the situation," she said. Cabinet wishes to assure the nation that corrective measures will be taken in order to protect the public, Mshwanga added. Okay, so all I can say on this is that the citizens I spoke to hope, no wish, that corrective measures are taken and are taken very soon. Now, speaking about corrective measures, what exactly can the government do in this type of situation? They plan to speak to business directly. This has been tried before. Moral suasion, so to speak, does not work. Price controls don't work either. They're even worse. So, what to do?
We are seeing the black market premium actually widening, and obviously that also then has a major destabilizing effect. In fact, in economics, normally we use the black market premium as one of the key indicators of instability. So the further it actually widens, the greater the levels of macroeconomic instability. That, of course, then creates a whole lot of challenges because it then directly affects pricing developments and also inflation.
The government of Zimbabwe has in fact acted swiftly with some measures. Critics contend, however, that the actions taken may not be enough or do not deal with the root cause of the problem, and that is money supply growth. But at least they have acted, and acted fast. The Zimbabwean government, through its finance minister, Professor Ntuli Ncube, has announced 7 measures to deal with what he terms, and I quote, enormous pressure on the exchange rate as the skewed preferences have continued to increase the volatility of the Zimbabwean dollar. Look, the 7 steps announced are: number 1, 100% retention of domestic foreign currency earnings. Number 2, adoption of all external loans by Treasury. Number 3, enhanced foreign exchange auction system. 4, lifting on all restrictions on importation of basic goods. 5, supportive interest rate environment. 6, promotion of the use of the domestic currency by government agencies. And finally, 7, gold coins and gold-backed digital tokens. I want to look at just 4 of these. The first, good news for citizens, the re-establishment and lifting of restrictions on importation of basic commodities. This should in theory ensure that all basic commodities in Zimbabwe are available and hopefully affordable. The second, 100% retention of domestic foreign currency earnings. Okay, when the Reserve Bank buys any retention, whether it be exports or from local foreign currency sales, they obviously have to pay for that currency with Zimbabwe dollars. Means they're pumping more Zimbabwe dollars into the system, which of course is too much money chasing too few goods, the US dollar. So this act will stop the central bank buying that currency, therefore stop them pumping in more money into the system. And trust me, it is a big number. The third intervention I want to look at is the enhanced foreign exchange auction system. I'm not really sure what this means because it has been said before, but let's hope part of these measures will allow easier access to currency through official means like bureaux de change by citizens. Finally, government's short-term intention to raise interest rates, which will make all lending in Zimbabwe, and I mean all lending in Zimbabwe, more expensive, but also reduce what is called credit creation. So it appears Diplomatic Passport has found out why Zimbabwe has a parallel exchange rate, why it is in free fall, and some solutions proffered from both the government, business community and economists on what to do about it. Prices rising daily. Some would say the parallel market out of control. Zimbabwe's government has moved and taken action. They put together a cabinet task force to look at the issue of prices and what they call unsustainable price increases. The question is, how quickly can they come up with solutions? Because until they do, it's Zimbabwean citizens who are suffering in the worst place possible, in their pockets.